In the last episode, we examined what to do with what you hear. What do you do when silence reveals what the noise was hiding? Silence reveals truth in honesty and reveals you and your life. What do you do when the noise stops? Before you can decide what to do with what you hear, you must know how to recognize truth when you hear it. You must distinguish truth from preference, reason from emotional reaction, conviction from emotional certainty, reality from opinion. Modern civilization, beginning in the 17th and 18th centuries, adopted a false ideological standard of knowledge. Only what can be measured through the scientific method, quantified, tested, or physically observed, is accepted and treated as objectively real. Anything that cannot be quantified, measured, and verified was pushed into extinction or the realm of private belief, personal feeling, subjective interpretation, imagination, mocked, ignored, deemed unknowable, and not important. This is a philosophical worldview of scientism. It is not science. Science studies the material world through methods. Scientism turns that method into a philosophical worldview of reality. Science is a tool. Scientism deems the tool the judge of everything that exists. Once that happened, meaning, conscience, moral truth, beauty, human dignity, purpose, and God are no longer accepted as true, right, real, or objectively knowable. That intellectual reduction began the decay of modern civilization. Welcome to The Quiet Interior with Jerry. This is a contemplative podcast on silence, truth, sound reason, conscience, and the interior life. This is not a place for political spin, manufactured opinion-driven rage, emotional manipulation, or the endless stream of commentary that leaves the human person intellectually scattered and the interior void. This is a place to slow down, to step outside the noise long enough to hear your own thoughts, to examine what is forming you, shaping your conscience, ordering your desires, and directing your life. It is a place to learn something that modern culture does not tolerate or reward. Not what to think, but how to think. How to distinguish truth from reaction, reason from rationalization, freedom from appetite, knowledge from the appearance of knowledge, honesty from the stories you tell yourself to avoid reality. You do not need to share my worldview to listen, but you do need honesty, because truth does not cooperate with self-deception. These questions will be examined through both a secular lens and a Catholic Christian lens. Their foundations are different, but both seek the same outcomes. Truth in honesty, submitting to the authority of sound reason, and live according to the truth. Truth is not merely an idea to discuss. Truth places a demand. Scientism is not science. That distinction must remain clear. Science is a disciplined method for studying the natural and material world. It observes, gathers evidence, tests, measures, compares, and revises its conclusions. Science has produced achievements. It has advanced medicine, agriculture, transportation, communication, engineering, and our understanding of the physical universe. Scientism is a philosophical belief. It declares that the scientific method is the only legitimate path to objective knowledge. That belief did not expand reason. It contracted reason. It reduced to reality to what one method could observe, measure, and quantify. It removed metaphysics, theology, moral truths, conscience, purpose, and human nature from the realm of objective knowledge. Reduced the human person to biology, psychology, behavior, preference, utility, and data. The void of reason began the decay of modern civilization. It attempts to dismiss the intellectual order by which a civilization defines, understands, and accepts knowledge. What is truth, goodness, justice, dignity, human nature, and the proper end of human life? A civilization does not decay when its economy weakens or its institutions fail. It decays when a civilization loses the ability to explain what a human being is, what truth is, what good is, and what human life is for. There is a sadness in modern civilization. Many people feel it but cannot name it. It is not simply suffering. Suffering has always accompanied human life. It is not conflict. Conflict has always been a part of human existence. It is not anxiety, exhaustion, loneliness, restlessness, or isolation. The sadness is deeper. It lies beneath productivity, entertainment, consumption, stimulation, and the constant need to remain occupied. It is the sadness of a life without an intelligible end. It is the loss of meaning. It is the growing inability to answer one basic human question. What is all of this for? Modern civilization possesses extraordinary scientific knowledge and technological power, the ability to communicate across the world in seconds, to study and observe distant galaxies, map activity within the brain, alter genetic material, carry access to endless amounts of information in the palm of a hand. Yet the oldest human questions remain. What is a good life? What is a human being? What is truth? What is love? What is justice? What is beauty? What is freedom? What is worth suffering for? What gives human life coherence? What makes an act morally good? And what is the human person ultimately ordered toward? These are not primitive questions left behind by progress. They are the foundational questions of the human person. The human being does not merely exist. The human being is aware of their own existence, remembers, anticipates, judges, loves, suffers, experiences guilt, recognizes beauty, knows the idea of death, asks whether they live a good life, not merely whether it is comfortable. Science provides information about human life. It cannot explain the meaning of human life. It can examine suffering, It cannot determine what is worth suffering for. It can observe behavior associated with love. It cannot determine what love requires of the person or why. It can't explain biological life. It cannot establish why every human life possesses inherent dignity. These are not failures of science. They are the proper boundaries of its method. Scientism refuses those boundaries. Scientism declares that what science cannot measure cannot be objectively known. Meaning then becomes subjective. Moral truth becomes preference. Human dignity becomes social agreement. Purpose becomes self-invention. A civilization remains technologically advanced while becoming unable to explain why its power should serve what is good. It possesses information and facts while it lacks wisdom. Technique without moral order, power without a clear understanding of what power is for, that is not progress. It is decay concealed beneath advancement. Science asks specific questions about physical reality. What is happening? How is it happening? What material causes are involved? Can the process be observed, measured, tested, and repeated? These are legitimate questions. Scientism goes beyond the limits of the scientific method. It declares that these are the only questions capable of producing objective knowledge. Science can measure the physical dimensions of reality. Scientism defines reality by those measures. Science uses instruments to examine the physical world. Scientism asserts the limits of those instruments as the limits of existence. That conclusion is not scientific. It is philosophical. Science can explain how the heart circulates blood. It cannot explain why betrayal wounds the human person. It can identify neurological activity associated with love. It cannot explain what love is for or what one person owes to another. It can measure wavelengths of light. It cannot explain why beauty moves a person to tears. It can study the brain while the person makes a moral judgment. It cannot determine if that moral judgment is true. It can observe aggression. It cannot explain why cruelty is intrinsically wrong. It can examine the physical process of death. It cannot explain the meaning of death or why human life is sacred. A disciplined scientist recognizes these boundaries. Scientism denies them. It declares that a question beyond empirical verification does not belong to objective knowledge. That claim contradicts scientism itself. Scientism accepts that only true, right, and real knowledge is what can be proven, measured, and quantified in a laboratory. Anything that cannot be empirically verified is deemed unknowable, unimportant, mocked, and ignored. It is a philosophical assertion about the nature of limits of knowledge. Scientism uses philosophy while denying philosophical knowledge. It presents itself as free from belief while resting upon a belief. It claims freedom from metaphysics while imposing its own metaphysical judgment upon reality. Scientism does not eliminate philosophy. It conceals its philosophy. Concealed assumptions and philosophy are dangerous and destructive because they are not examined. A civilization then becomes dogmatic while describing itself as open-minded. It becomes intellectually closed while claiming to follow reason. It accuses others of belief while remaining blind to its own beliefs. Science is good when practiced with humility. It serves truth. Scientism places itself above truth. Science examines reality. Scientism dictates what reality is permitted to contain. The rise of scientism did not occur overnight by one thinker, one discovery, or one idea, nor because science became too powerful or successful. It occurred because the success of one method was converted into a total philosophy. The Enlightenment strengthened scientific investigation, encouraged intellectual inquiry, and challenged genuine abuses of authority. Those achievements are real. The error was not the use of reason. The error was the narrowing of reason. For centuries, Western civilization recognized that different disciplines examined different areas of reality. Natural science examined the material world. Philosophy examined being, causality, truth, goodness, justice, and human nature. Ethics considered how human beings ought to live. Metaphysics examined being, existence, and what explains contingent reality. Theology examined God, creation, revelation, providence, and what the human person is ultimately made for. These disciplines used different methods because they asked different questions. Their distinctions did not make them enemies. Scientism destroyed that order. It elevated empirical measurement above every other form of rational inquiry. The ancient philosophical question was, what is true? The scientific question became, what can be demonstrated through an empirical method? That shift changed the intellectual foundation of civilization. Whatever could not be empirically demonstrated, measured, and verified was pushed aside and into extinction. Metaphysics became speculation. Theology became private sentiment. Moral truth became preference. Conscience became psychology. Contemplation became inactivity. Mystery became ignorance. Wisdom became technique. Ancient philosophy did not merely ask how something worked. It asked what something was. What is the nature of a human being? What is justice? What is goodness? What is truth? What is the proper end of human life? Aristotle used the language of finality. To understand something fully was not merely to identify its material composition or physical mechanism. It was also to understand what kind of a thing it was and what end it was ordered toward. The Greek word telos means an end, purpose, or fulfillment. The question was not only, how does it work? It was also, what is this for? Modern technological minds ask, how does it work? How can it be controlled? How can it be reproduced? How can it be accelerated? How can it be optimized? How can it be used? Those questions have a proper place. However, they are destructive when they replace the higher question. A civilization that knows how to do something, but not whether it ought to be done, lacks wisdom. It is powerful, but power without wisdom does not remain neutral. The result was a movement from contemplation to control, from wisdom to technique, from truth as something discovered and received to truth as something constructed and managed, from nature as an intelligible order to nature as raw material awaiting human mastery, from the human person as a being with inherent dignity and proper end to the person as a collection of measurable functions. The success of technology then strengthened the illusion that technique could solve the human condition itself. Scientism transferred hope from wisdom and virtue to progress and control. It did not abolish faith. It redirected faith toward human mastery. It relocated salvation into technique. No created method can bear the weight of the human soul. Through the secular lens, scientism produces a false anthropology, a false understanding of the human person. When scientific measurement becomes the standard of all knowledge, the person is reduced to what can be observed and quantified. Biology, neurology, genetics, behavior, environmental conditioning, productivity, preference, data, and outcomes. Interior and human formation is removed from society, and the understanding of the human person becomes obsolete. Conscience becomes a psychological response. Morality becomes a social strategy. Love becomes chemistry. Freedom becomes a neurological activity. Meaning becomes personal invention. The human person no longer discovers meaning within reality. The human person manufactures meaning within an indifferent universe. This produces direct consequences. Scientism identifies a physical mechanism and claims that the human reality itself has been explained. It has not. You can observe neurological activity when a mother holds her child. That does not explain what a mother owes her child. You can examine the psychological effects of guilt. That does not determine whether a person is guilty. A physical description does not exhaust human meaning. The mechanism is real. It is not the whole reality. Reductionism takes love, conscience, thought, freedom, and beauty, and declares that each is nothing more than its material components. Love is nothing more than chemistry. Conscience is nothing more than conditioning. Thought is nothing more than neural activity. Beauty is nothing more than preference. The human person is nothing more than biology. That conclusion is not scientific. It is a philosophical denial of everything science cannot measure. The scientific method does not measure moral obligation. Scientism attempts to remove objective morality from public knowledge. However, moral judgment does not disappear. People continue to call actions right or wrong, just or unjust, compassionate or cruel. They continue to demand honesty, fidelity, courage, responsibility, and respect from others. Scientism denies objective moral truth while speaking with moral certainty. Once objective moral order is denied, moral judgments rest upon emotion, social consensus, tribal loyalty, institutional authority, or political power. The question is no longer what is right. The question becomes who decides what will be called right. When truth no longer governs power, power governs truth. What appears to be liberation from moral truth becomes a submission to whoever has power and controls the language, institutions, and consequences. Once the person is reduced to measurable functions, the person becomes a system to manage. Behavior is regulated. Mood is adjusted. Productivity is increased. Risk is minimized. Performance is optimized. Medicine, psychology, education, and social organization serve genuine human goods when they serve the whole person. They become dehumanizing when the category replaces the person. A patient becomes data. A citizen becomes a variable. A worker becomes output. A child becomes a projected outcome. The primary question is no longer, who are you becoming? What do you love? What kind of person are your choices forming? What truth are you avoiding? The question becomes, are you functioning efficiently? A person can function and remain lost. A person can be productive and have no purpose. A person can be comfortable and internally disordered. The human person does not need only management. The human person needs formation. Human formation orders the intellect, will, emotions, desires, habits, conscience, character, and freedom. Its goal is integrity, a growing correspondence between what is true, what is loved, what is chosen, and how one lives. Scientism rejects mystery. Mystery is not irrationality. Mystery means that something can be truly known without being exhaustively comprehended. Love, beauty, courage, grief, betrayal, loyalty, guilt, and hope are real, but cannot be weighed or put under a microscope. Mystery is not the enemy of reason. Mystery is what reason encounters when reality exceeds the intellect's ability to contain it completely. Rejecting mystery is not intellectual maturity. It is intellectual pride. Modern culture does not suffer because it asks scientific questions. It suffers because it stopped asking human questions.